After 7 days of corrections, contradictions, and an out-of-the-blue invite to Vladimir Putin to visit the White House following the Helsinki summit, Donald Trump appears to be moving on to other topics. Cue his personal favorites: the Washington Post, the discredited Mueller witch hunt, the Department of Justice, FBI, Obama, and in a rare, aggressively all-caps tweet, Iran. And that was just the past 24 hours. While that shift in conversation might help him score political points, Democrats are also in the midst of a politically driven shift of their own. This weekend, New York congressional candidate Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez took her message of democratic socialism on the road, campaigning with Bernie Sanders in, of all places, the Midwest.
Wherever there is working class people, there is hope for the progressive movement.
Cortez, as you'll recall, stunned the political establishment last month when she knocked off a member of House leadership by campaigning on Medicare for all, free college tuition, and abolishing ICE. And now Democrats across the country, including some here in Massachusetts, are hoping to do the same with a similar message, taking the party in a more left-leaning direction. But not everybody's on board. Last week in Congress, for example, 18 Democrats split with their party and sided with the Republicans on a resolution supporting ICE. And while democratic socialism might play in New York City, in fact it did, it remains to be seen how it plays out in other parts of the country. So, is the party undergoing a revolution, or is Ocasio-Cortez an aberration? Joining me are John Walsh, former chair of the Massachusetts Democratic Party, who helped engineer Deval Patrick's campaigns for governor. John, good to see you. Emily Cherinack, the founder and executive director of the New Politics. It's a group that recruits veterans and others to run for office. Hello to you, Emily. Hi. And Mac D'Alessandro, former political director at SEIU, and now a partner at Democracy Partners. Nice to see you as well. So there are a bunch of Democrats who aren't quite as happy about Ocasio-Cortez's victory as is Bernie Sanders. People like Alcee Hastings, congressman from Florida, Senator Duckworth from Illinois, and probably the highest-ranking Democrat. Here's Nancy Pelosi almost immediately after the victory.
They made a choice in one district, so let's not get yourself carried away as an expert on demographics.
Who's right? Has she paved the path, Ocasio-Cortez, for the so-called blue wave in November, or is it a sort of one and done in New York City, Emily?
I just think that's not the right question.
What is the right question?
I think to me, I think the question is not about are you a centrist or a Democrat, are you a progressive Democrat. I think voters want authentic leaders who put the country first and get things done for all of us. And I think that's what we should be focusing on, not about where you are on the blue line.
Well, except that she wouldn't have been in Kansas if she didn't think that was a message that would sell in Kansas as well, right? She wasn't saying vote for people who put America first. She was saying Medicare for all, free college tuition, the same message that beat Crowley in New York City, right? So obviously she and Sanders think it sells everywhere, no?
I think diversity is great, and diversity of ideas and opinions are great. But at the end of the day, it is about, how do we do what's best for the voters and for our country.
Are you going to answer my question, or are you going to answer hers?
I'll answer yours, Jim. I think she's definitely paved the way for the Democratic Party. And I don't mean that every Democrat's going to have the same position on every issue. But what Ocasio did was stood up for what she believed in. She worked like hell in a grassroots campaign on the ground, engaging people, and challenged the status quo that she disagreed with. I think if Democrats do that all across the country, it will give a different mix of policy positions in different places. But the philosophy of that kind of hard work, tell the truth, stand up for what you believe in, that's how we win.
Your claim to fame is as a grassroots kind of guy. Is it possible that everybody is misreading what happened in New York City, and not that her policy positions don't matter, but it's an attractive, young, fresh face who campaigned like wild, had great media. That spot everybody's seen was beautiful. Is it possible the issues were secondary, even though she thinks they were number one?
Well, I think the issues are number one, but they're not universal. But yes, I think about for 2018 particularly, Democrats' problem is turnout. People agree with us on the issues. They just don't vote in the off years. So when you engage
they agree
with
on
people,
abolishing ICE?
I think is it about time we had that debate?
I don't know.
I think it is. And otherwise Democrats are going to say nothing can be done.
Is Ocasio-Cortez the future of the Democratic Party?
The way she campaigned is, what I always advise my clients is that how you campaign is part of your message. And Democrats, in order for there to be a wave, have to get out there and engage voters very aggressively.
Does unity even matter? I mean, if it turns out that Doug Jones is a conservative Democrat from Alabama, Connor Lamb, similar Southwest Pennsylvania, and then you have this deeply progressive woman from New York City, does it really matter? I mean, the one common thread is we're all against whatever Trump is for. I mean, that is none of you have mentioned that, but it is the common thread, is it not?
Well, in part. I mean, if you want to look at a real example of somebody who is from one of these more kind of the Rust Belt and has pockets of conservative voters that represented by is Sherrod Brown in Ohio, who has staked out progressive positions on several issues, and some would argue more progressive than the electorate he represents.
You're all trying to resist saying this is an anti-Trump thing. Is that a safe assumption? Because you want to say Democrats are for something rather than just against something. But the common thread that does unite the moderate Democrats and the more radical Democrats is opposition to the world according to Trump, isn't it, Emily?
I think it's a yes and. I mean, I think a lot of our veteran candidates running this cycle were inspired after 2016 because they put their life on the line for the country and they didn't want to see the democracy fall apart, so they wanted to run for office. But
we should say you're the woman behind Seth Moulton, not take anything away from Seth Moulton himself, but that's in part where this whole thing.
Yeah, and look at Seth. I mean, he's really about recruiting a new generation of leaders who are about country first. So it's not just about Trump. It's about what do we do what's best for all of us.
You know, despite the message I'm hearing from all three of you, you guys know far better than I that the opposition party always tries to find the Antichrist, for lack of a better expression. Nancy Pelosi will probably be running for Congress in every single district in the country, even though she isn't. And with Ocasio-Cortez traveling around the country, my assumption, some Republicans are going to say, that's exactly the face we want up there. A Latina woman who believes we should abolish ICE, who believes in huge government spending, at least they will say that. So she, maybe not literally, but figuratively, is going to be running all across the country, isn't she?
That would be all right with me, right? And because
Do you really believe that, by the way?
I really believe it. So, listen, take Massachusetts. 1 million people voted for Hillary Clinton, don't normally vote in the off years. She is going to be motivating to bring those out. Talk to someone in Tennessee today. They get 1.5 million votes, 750,000 unregistered people of color in Tennessee. Yes, it's about time we put the full range of our deep talent pool on display. And yes, she's part of it. And so is Connor Lamb. And by the way, of course, we're all against Trump. It's almost goes without saying. It does give us a great base to start with, but it's not sufficient. If we believe it's enough, we're in trouble.
Even if the Democrats end up taking back the House of Representatives, if everybody has their own definition, Emily, of whatever you said before, whatever is best for America, what's the mandate of that group, again, other than to be against Donald Trump? I mean, some of them want to abolish ICE, some don't want to abolish ICE. Some want to find money for free higher education. Some say it's a great concept, but totally unaffordable. So where's the mandate?
Right. Well, if we elect leaders who are about how do we put the country first, they'll find common ground. So you have Dan McCready in North Carolina 9 running for Congress, and Juana Matias in Massachusetts 3. Mm-hmm. You know, Juana is very progressive, and Dan is not. Yet I trust the both of them to come together and to figure out a way to solve problems.
Where else is this playing out in Massachusetts? You're a Presley supporter in the Capitola race, are you not?
Proudly.
Is this issue Ocasio-Cortez versus, let's call it, more traditional Democratic agenda rather than a moderate agenda? Is that playing out, or essentially, other than ICE, are they two progressive Democrats? One's been there a long time, one's a fresh face. Is it an issue?
Well, they're not. The two races, New York and Boston, are not the same. But that theme that you're just talking about, for many people in deep blue districts that are depending on their congresspeople to lead the charge to the left, to push the progressive agenda, it's not sufficient anymore to just be agreeable on the issues. We want to push that agenda. Doesn't mean we're going to win it all.
So you think it is relevant in that race, and you think it's relevant in the third CD. Is it relevant anywhere in Massachusetts come November? Anywhere else? Is it an issue in Zakim versus Galvin? It's an in-state race, but it's a long-time incumbent versus yet another young, fresh face.
I mean, I think that's the conversation to be having is, you know, do we want fresh faces? This seems to be a party, the Democratic Party, that is now energized by new voices. And
even though it's all its leaders are like 100 in Congress.
They're not quite 100.
But they're edging up there.
Sure. How
about you? As I said, you worked for Deval Patrick, and you're not going to tell us whether he's running. Do you know if he's running for president?
I don't know.
Do you honestly raise your right hand? Do you honestly not know?
I don't think he knows today.
Based on that piece, I think that Matt Visor wrote the other day, does that issue about the Ocasio-Cortez approach versus a more traditional approach not apply to two potential presidential candidates from here, Elizabeth Warren and Deval Patrick? Warren being the Ocasio-Cortez and Deval Patrick being the inspirational, more traditional Democrat? No? You're making a face of
Joe Crowley was the inspirational. It breaks down somewhere there. But,
but does it not? But
no, listen, it's a conversation we have to have. But honestly, even in describing it, it's not that simple. And what it is, I think what you're seeing, and by the way, in Boston, it's not just Presley and Capuano. It's the DA's race with a lot of progressive candidates. 4 members of the Speaker's leadership team in the House have primary opponents, and they're all being challenged. Not just Jeff Sanchez.
Big story in the Globe yesterday.
But across there are 4 of them, and there's young, aggressive grassroots campaigns that are saying, this is what we want from our party. We want to debate these issues. We don't want the debate to be foreclosed. We don't want it to be shut off. And that's why if Juana Matias and Connor Lamb end up in the House, they're not going to agree on stuff. But you know what? If their voice is heard, we're going to have a debate about those issues, which is good for us.
So Ocasio-Cortez comes to America is the conclusion, I think, here. Is that a fair statement? It's my statement. Nice to see you, John. Emily, great to see you.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Be well.